Halo is a game series that has really pretty explosions. What I'm wondering though is which game has the prettiest explosions? Starting with the first Halo is really fun since these explosions have that World War II look to them, where the grenades kick up a lot of dirt and debris into the air. Chunks of soil and rock will be tossed around the environment if you detonate a grenade on natural ground. But if you throw that grenade onto a metal surface, chunks of twisted steel and metal will be flung about instead. After the detonation, the smoke left behind will lazily drift in the breeze as smoke normally does before slowly fading away. Considering this game's age, the attention to detail in the art and animation is astonishing. The developers couldn't deform the terrain in response to the explosions, so they did their best to imply the effect the explosion has on its surroundings. Good stuff. In Halo 2, things are a bit interesting. The explosions take on a bit more of that video game fireball look that we all associate with grenades. But some of that World War II look is still retained. Dirt is kicked into the air, and there's even these little arcs and dirt streams where larger chunks of soil and rock are tossed into the air, and they break off, leaving these tails that kind of make them look like mini comets. Disappointingly, there is a lot less debris kicked up than Combat Evolved, and the lingering smoke doesn't drift in the breeze as noticeably anymore, and sort of despawns rather quickly. What I do like though, is the developers upped the production value of the plasma explosions. In the first Halo, it was just a cyan fireball. In this game though, the cyan fireball is much more bright, and then when it finally clears, the air around the detonation is charged with electricity which snaps and crackles before dissipating. It's cool seeing the way the plasma explosion affects the atmosphere around a detonation site. There's also, of course, vehicles. Seeing as alien vehicles operate with plasma as an energy source, a cyan eruption is created, and the remains of the vehicle crackle with electricity, chemical reactions caused by the detonating plasma. A detail I always liked about this game is the metal carcass has bits and corners glowing a bright orange, superheated by the explosion, and requiring a few minutes to cool off before they can be safely touched. UNSC vehicles sort of collapse as the engine detonates, leaving behind an intact but smoldering carcass. I actually love the detail of how tires and car parts seem programmed to roll away from the carcass. It adds a bit of personality to the explosion. They could have just let the physics engine take it from here and make something that looks really cheap, but coding the explosion to specifically look this way for the sake of presentation is appreciated. Let's move on to Halo 3. I'll start this off with what I consider to be the game's weakest explosion, the grenade. It still kicks up dirt and smoke, but the smoke doesn't drift in the wind, and it's just a much less impressive effect. Inside artificial structures, it's even worse, as it makes no effort to give its detonation a sense of presence in the environment. Just a flash, a puff of smoke, and then it's gone, as if it never happened. The plasma grenade explosions look quite good in Halo 3. I do like the way that Halo 3 bloom system makes the cyan glow bright, white hot. And once the explosion is done, there's this extremely subtle vapor-like smoke effect that's left behind that lingers for quite a while. Too many games will just despawn smoke as quickly as they can, so I appreciate that the aftermath of a plasma explosion in Halo 3 lingers. These are just grenades though, and Halo 3's vehicle explosions are a work of handcrafted digital art. The Wraith Explosion is one I've loved to this day, because of how slow and detailed the explosion is. When a Wraith is destroyed in Halo 3, the vehicle itself doesn't explode. What explodes is something inside of the vehicle. It starts with nothing. Muffled rumblings can be heard inside of the vehicle. Something deep within the Wraith has overloaded and is trying to punch its way out. The Wraith will lose a chunk of itself, and then the top will burst as a pillar of plasma fire finally punches its way free from the shell. What you're left with is an intact shell of a vehicle with a giant hole in the top that's just billowing out blue smoke and plasma fire. It's like a bug that exploded from the inside out. The Warthog is another really classy vehicle, erupting into a fireball, sending wheels and car parts spinning with the momentum of the explosion. But what I think I love the most about it is the sound design. So, anyone watching this who has ever had their car totaled knows that vehicles make a really unusual sound when hit. what you get is something crunchy and shattery, the sound of glass and metal fibers splintering and shattering. When my car was hit and totaled in 2018, the most, well, I guess you could say iconic sound from that experience was the shattering and the layers of it. I could hear metal grinding, glass fracturing, and while it sucks that that happened to my car, it made me really appreciate the sound work of the Halo 3 Warthog being totaled. Vehicles don't make low, rumbly booms. They're high-pitched and scratchy when they crash, leaving behind shards of metal and glass everywhere. But what kind of explosion video would this be without talking about Halo 3's magnum opus, the Scarab? Take everything great about the Wraith's internal combustion and amplify it 1,000-fold. The Scarab is a large vehicle. It's got a lot of plasma powering it. Lots of unstable and dangerous alien technology keeps those legs moving. And when its power core is irreparably damaged, an alarm signals. Run. Run fast. The giant walker starts shaking, unable to get up off the ground. The Scarab's reactor is going into meltdown, and then the noise level rises fast. The chassis of the walker is torn in half as a giant, blinding tower of plasma fire erupts from within, a sudden and violent explosion of energy that reaches high into the air, demanding you look at it and soak it all in. Halo 3's bloom system is working overdrive, making that fireball look hot. Chunks of metal are turned into meteors, and in order to sell the importance of the explosion, the debris falls slowly, and then as the giant fireball starts to dissipate and lose energy, the giant smoldering and smoking carcass of the beast remains in the environment, a thing you can climb and explore to your heart's content. An excellent fireworks show. Now let's move on to Halo Reach. Reach was a game that didn't really move the needle too much in regards to explosions. But while I think the fidelity is rather high, the explosions themselves are rather dark, due to Halo Reach dropping the impressive bloom effect Halo 3 had. They're a lot smokier and a lot more murky, and it makes them seem, at least to me, a little bit less impactful. What I will say is quite good in Reach, though, are the grenades. Now that's an improvement over Halo 3's. In moving on to Halo 4, we need to understand something. While the game was pushing some rather high poly counts for its models, sacrifices had to be made. And unfortunately, Halo 4's explosions were hit hard by the graphical downgrades. Back in 2012, I actually remember being really excited about the explosions in Halo 4 since I loved Halo 3's explosions, and I assumed the sequel would crank things up a notch, and I was really let down in the first level when you launch a nuke at a Covenant cruiser. The nuke launches. It has a really bright lens flare. Anticipation builds up. This is just like the Scarab. I was excited to be blinded by the explosion. But instead of that, the ship very quickly split off into some different parts looking a bit like a toy, and some puffs of smoke appeared. For all that buildup with the missile launch, the payoff wasn't what it should have been. Things unfortunately didn't improve from here. The game's Lich Explosion is a bit of a meme in the Halo community, more so than the nuke at the start of the game because of how disappointing the Lich was when stacked up against the Scarab. You get a similar situation where you board it, destroy its power core, and then bail. But instead of a blinding, magnificent, slow-motion firework display, the Lich appears to despawn, a puff of smoke appears, and a few little scraps with no smoke or fire on them quickly fall to the ground. A disappointing downgrade from Halo 3. What's unfortunate is Halo 5 was hit pretty hard with some graphical cutbacks and downgrades for the sake of 60 frames per second at high resolutions. Covenant vehicles no longer crackle with electricity following an explosion. No glowing or anything, no heat, and then those even despawn fast. Look at the poor Wraith Explosion. No anticipation. No story being told in the way that it combusts. No sense of the inner mechanisms of the vehicle melting down. Just a very fast explosion, and then the debris begins quickly despawning as if the vehicle was never there to begin with. Even normal explosions took quite a hit to their visual fidelity. No lingering smoke, no chunks of soil and earth flung everywhere, just a shower of cheap sparks or a low-resolution smoke effect, and all of those despawn rather quickly, leaving no trace of a detonation ever occurring to begin with. It's sad to see the push for 60 FPS cost Halo 5 so much. Will Halo Infinite improve this? Well, something I noticed in last year's demo is, despite the graphics not being up to snuff, there was quite a lot of personality in the explosions and the detonations of things compared to Halo 5. Really, the only complaint I had with some of these explosions is that, like Halo 5, the detonation would happen and then the particle effects would very quickly despawn, excusing themselves as fast as possible, leaving no real sense of lingering or smoke in the air. It's been quite a while since that demo though, and Halo Infinite's graphics have come a long way, and it has me asking, what will the explosions look like in the final game? Will they be pretty? I guess a better question to ask you is, which game do you think has the prettiest explosions? What game in general, not just Halo, has the prettiest explosions to you? Let me know down below, and I'll see you on the next video. Also check out my Discord.